Many of you who saw my video on the latest FNAF teasers have been asking me if I saw Scott Cawthon's confirmation of some of the plot points in Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole. And yes, I did see it, and I'm still getting comments about Scott Cawthon's major reveal about the Five Nights at Freddy's theory, so I decided to make this video to let people know that I have seen that comment and to clarify what I mean by it being sort of vague. If you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan and you have no idea what's going on, the game Theorists basically made a video on Five Nights at Freddy's the series, where they give quote-unquote their final theory on the series until the next game comes out, where they basically go over what's been happening in the game to date, trying to make sense of the story, the mysteries behind it, and so on and so forth, you know, the basic FNAF theorist stuff. Then pretty much out of nowhere, Scott Cawthon comes and says this video is pretty much the saving grace of the FNAF series because a whole bunch of fans were leaving, a whole bunch of theorists were quitting because they couldn't put the plot points together. But the most interesting part of this post is he says three main things that people are saying are confirmations. I don't particularly think they are confirmations, but they do give us a lot of information. A lot more than we've gotten from Scott in the past for sure. And I'll just quote the post directly on this. Scott says, "I won't go through the video point by point, of course, but I will say this. For those of you who are really upset about the idea of Mike Trap, that is the idea of Michael Afton being Springtrap, or upset about the idea of Purple Guy being literally purple, or hung up on 1983 versus 1987, watch Matpat's video and breathe a sigh of relief." Smiley face. So let's go over these things one by one and what the community thinks has been confirmed based on this post. So starting with being upset about the idea of Mike Trap. As I just mentioned, Mike Trap refers to Michael Afton being Springtrap. People thought this because at the end of Sister Location Custom Night, when you beat Very Hard mode, you get a special cutscene where it looks like Michael Afton is giving a dialogue to his father, and then he appears as Springtrap. And the reason people mainly thought this is because his voice was slowed down so much that it sounded robotic just before Springtrap appeared on the screen.
I'm going to come find you.
Now, in another post by Scott Cawthon, he mentions that this was a huge mistake. What he did with this sound clip was he slowed it down so much that it started to sound robotic. It was a complete accident, a complete mistake, and he didn't want to get a retake of the voice done. And this is a pretty big deal because that voice sounding robotic at the end, followed by a robot showing up on the screen, none other than Springtrap, was a big deal. Everybody thought that Michael Afton was Springtrap, including myself. And why not? Because in the previous Sister Location cutscenes, you can see what looks to be Michael Afton leaving his house and slowly decaying day after day, becoming more and more purple. And who's the only purple person in the game that we know of? Purple Guy. What did Purple Guy end up doing? Going into a Spring Bonnie suit and getting himself crushed in front of a bunch of child spirits. The evidence seemed so strong at this point that it was undeniable, so this is a big helper, and it really needed to be cleared up. Now, as a result of this, people think that William Afton, who is Michael Afton's father, although we don't know if his name's even William in the game, is actually Springtrap. And because Springtrap appears on the screen just as Michael says, "I'm going to come find you," and it gets very slowed down, the community is starting to say, oh well, that's probably his father, and he's going to look for his father, who we call William Afton, in Springtrap, as Springtrap roams around the world doing whatever he does. Most people think he's going to go on a killing spree. But then you might say, why is Mike Afton's father purple if the only purple character we've come across so far is Mike Afton himself, the one who turns purple before our eyes at the end of the Sister Location cutscenes? And what the game theorists have proposed is that because we've seen Purple Guy appear on a dark background in most of the scenes in the Five Nights at Freddy's series so far, he needed to be colored that way to be contrasting with the background. And I think that's a really fantastic point. The only point I can see against this is in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, we can see the Purple Guy putting on the helmet of somebody in a spring suit, and the person in the suit looks perfectly normal. They have a light skin tone, whereas the Purple Guy appears next to them in the dark and they're purple. So maybe other reasons for this is to show that there's actually a relationship between the Purple Guy, Mike Afton, and this serial killer who is William Afton, his father. I think the reason why there's so much support behind Matpat's argument about the color theory is that Scott himself actually confirmed in the second point that he mentioned that people were upset about the Purple Guy being purple, so if you watch the video, you can breathe a sigh of relief. So basically what this is saying is Purple Guy probably isn't purple. Purple Guy being the guy that we've seen in FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 4, throughout the entire series. And might even tie in with what I just said, perhaps the color is just there to draw a relationship between Mike and his father. And to be honest, I'm not sure why people would be so upset about the purple guy being purple anyway. I think that's actually really cool, and it's a really good thing that Scott clarified this, otherwise I would have thought the purple guy was Mike Afton for a long time, just based on the fact that I thought it would be a really cool and creative idea to make him a zombie. The slight vagueness in this statement that he's made though leads me to believe that the purple guy might actually be a little bit purple, or might be a color like grey, but purple was used to distinguish him from the background, kind of like the game theorists said. There's just something about him saying literally purple, and the fact that he doesn't really hit a bullseye in what he says that makes me think otherwise. And then he says people who are hung up on 1983 versus 1987 should breathe a sigh of relief. This is a pretty big deal, and I'm not actually sure what he was talking about even after I had actually seen the Game Theorists video on this. Because when I think 1983 versus 1987, I think two main things. I think the setting of Five Nights at Freddy's 4, and I think the bite. Because according to the entire series, there was a bite in 83 and a bite in 87. And because there was a bite in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, but the TV in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 said 1983, a lot of people thought that was actually 1987 and the TV was showing reruns of an old TV show. But what I think this is directed at is the actual year that the game was set in, 1983, because in Sister Location you can punch 1983 in the keypad when you go against Enid's wishes and you do the fake good ending, I don't know what to call that, but when you end up in that situation where you're kind of like in Five Nights at Freddy's 1 except Enid's coming to attack you, you can punch in the numbers 1983 on the keypad and it shows a picture of the little boy's bedroom that you play as in Five Nights at Freddy's 4. So what was proposed, and I actually believe this too, is that 1983 is the year that Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was set in. The whole backstory behind that was the show was probably brand new, a diner was made around that, or vice versa. A diner was made and a show was made to support it. Both were very successful until this bite happened, and then things went crazy. Perhaps later on I'll make a longer video on the entire FNAF story later. As for the bites, there was probably a bite in 83 and 87. I'd probably have to do a little bit more research because for some reason I can't find out why we thought that there was a bite in 87. I know it has something to do with the security guard, but I can't find that piece of evidence anywhere. Maybe I'll have to play through Five Nights at Freddy's 2 again to find that. In the meantime, my analysis of the FNAF 6 teasers actually stirred up a lot of discussion, so be sure to check it out by tapping this video, or check out these videos which were picked just for you. If you're new, remember to subscribe and to tap that bell for more FNAF and horror game theories that actually make sense. And prodigies, I hope these videos help to expand on how you think. See ya!